sound is.
Κυρίες και κύριοι, καλώς ορίσατε σε ακόμα ένα επεισόδιο του Ouzo Talk.
You clown.
Did you expect that?
No, not at all. You sound like a flight attendant.
You reckon I could go for that sort of role?
They speak that fast.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you.
On the GN Airlines, anyway.
Well, that actually... Oh, okay, our guest has come in early, but look, that's exactly where I got it
By
from.
the way, I've seen the pilot one time come out and, no joke, have a cigarette with a no smoking sign behind him in front of everybody.
Wow.
But it wasn't a gin, it was Olympic. But he was just smoking something. I thought, what the fuck? Okay, anyway.
Where do we start on Olympic fair dinkum? We've spoken about them at length.
Mate,
I hope they still don't do that, but I was terrified. Like, first I thought, who's flying the bloody plane?
Yeah.
But then he just was a good-looking dude, had the hat, that he was all looking cool, smoking a ciggy.
There you go. What a classic.
The good old days of...
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Of Greek aviation, wasn't it?
Are they still around?
Olympic? Yeah.
They're the regional airline now for Greece.
Okay.
So they're part of the Aegean group. But that's where I got that intro from.
Yeah. There you go.
I thought I'd surprise you with that one today.
Mate, you did. That was very good, actually. I started laughing at you before you said anything.
I'll never be a cabin manager, but never mind. Podcasting's more up my alley, I reckon.
Classic.
How you been, Nick?
Mate, been excellent. Fantastic, actually.
Yeah.
Life's good. Can't complain. Another podcast. We're up to, 24 now?
I think this is 24, and what a guest to have for this episode. Fair dinkum. I mean, we've been after him for a little while now, and we managed to bump into him at the Greek Rugby League launch a few weeks ago, and, he was quite happy to come on. So, I mean, we're super proud to have one of Australia's most well-known and successful businessmen with us in the distillery today. Let me tell you a little bit about him, Nick. He was the founder and chairman of Wizard Home Loans and is currently the chairman of Yellow Brick Road. He was the host of The Apprentice and the Celebrity Apprentice Australia, and is revered in Australia for his business acumen, but also for the strong financial and motivational advice that he generously gives when asked. He's also a successful podcaster thanks to his two amazing and successful shows, The Mentor and Straight Talk. Nick, he's a Roosters board member, which we'll overlook for the sake of this episode. Okay. All we know is that he's half Irish, but entirely Greek. He's the Greek god of Australian finance. Mark Bouris, welcome to Ouzo Talk.
Hey guys, how you going? I'm really happy to be here.
Oh mate, we're so jazzed to have you here. How does it feel to be amongst Greeks on a podcast?
Well, it's funny, at our office and our mental podcast, just about everyone there is Greek anyway, and those who aren't Greek want to be Greek. So but I feel very comfortable.
Is that by design?
Well, no, it's just happened that way, but I feel very comfortable too because there's a plate of food in front of me here too. So I'm very happy.
Well, let me say this is all Nick's doing today. What do you got here, Nick? You've got some you got salami, you've got truffled cheese, you've got kefalograviera, there's salmon. Mate, you've gone all out today.
Mate, I do it every episode, don't I?
You do, but this one's got a little bit of flair about it, I feel.
We were going to do the octopus, but couldn't find any in stock.
Actually, Nick does a really good octopus in vinegar.
Let's just go to the front here. Couldn't you go and catch some octopus?
We should have.
Come on, mate. What are you doing?
I know. Bloody hell.
Oh dear.
We can't forget we've got someone else in the room too, actually.
Yeah, there's another Greek in the room who's come along with Mark. And look, I mean, it's philoxenia. We can't. I mean, he's here working with Mark. But mate, John, welcome to the distillery.
Mate, he's got a drink, so we can't pretend you're not here. So we got you a glass. So
it's a Greek thing, isn't it?
It is.
It's a Greek Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know when this podcast is going to air, but I can tell you guys, listeners, this is a Friday afternoon.
We're just getting warmed up for the weekend, Mark. Come on. Well, on that note, why don't we get into the episode properly? What do you reckon, Nick?
I think we should, mate.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Let's do it. Στην υγεία μας, παιδιά. Cheers. Mark, welcome. Oh, I think you need a top up there, mate.
No, I got a little bit.
You got a little bit.
So we're all good.
Nick, what are we drinking today?
I was going to ask you though. You brought the bottle, but
I did.
Vekaraki.
It's a top shelf tsipuro. It is fantastic. It is one of the best ones out there.
For those, tsipuro is like basic moonshine, but it's okay.
It's fantastic.
Well, each village has its own version, but
yeah, it's definitely a mountainous drink.
Yeah,
the Cretans have it as well, but it's the leftover of wine, grapes. So all the seeds and the stems of grapes, they crush that and they get tsipuro out of it.
And don't waste anything.
Exactly.
There's no waste, particularly where my man comes from, like his village. Nothing gets wasted.
Where is he from? Now that you mentioned that.
So Dad is from Upper Peloponneso.
Yep.
And from one of the main cities there, Tripoli, which is sort of in the middle. But not from there, from a village not far. So he's an Arcadian. He comes from a village called Rizes, which is sort of in the mountains. Actually quite famous for its churches. So it's got four churches. Mm-hmm. And in the spring, when we have a lot of the festivals, a lot of people come from Athens down to see these churches as the snow's melting and everything is apparently very beautiful at that time. I've never been there at that particular time. Dad's family grew, they're farmers. So they grew melons and stuff like that. That's what they grew in his village, except the war hit, so they had to stop growing. But
so you're at Tripoli Shorty, as they say. We have a lot of friends from Tripoli. They'll be going nuts now, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hearing this,
Well, it's a big city. It's sort of a central place in that everything goes through there. If you're going from north to south or south to north, I mean, especially these days with the big freeway they built, the 10-lane freeway, which is like the most treacherous thing in the world. Unless you are prepared to drive at 120 kilometres an hour, I'd suggest don't go on it.
Yeah.
Because even at 120 kilometres an hour, you feel like you're doing about 20 k's because everyone's just going past you.
It's vicious.
What's amazing to me on that freeway is that every maybe 10 k's there's a toilet. Yeah. There's on both sides of the road. There's a stainless steel toilet, male and female. I don't understand. Everyone maybe have weak bladders or prostate problems or something out there, but it's
every 10 kilometres here. There's a Macca's.
Exactly. Every 10 k's you can get out and take a leak, which is good.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
That suited me.
So your dad was born there, and what about your grandparents? How far back did they go?
Yeah, they're all from that same village. Wow. So Papu and Yaya also from that village, but the village is divided into quarters. Mm-hmm. Pretty normal for villages, but they divide in quarters, and my Yaya comes from one quarter, and my grandfather comes from the other quarter. Mm-hmm. There's actually a house there called Bouris Castle still. It's considered a castle, but it was actually built by the Turks some hundreds and hundreds of years ago. The Bouris family still own it, and it's a big old stone building, relatively speaking, big compared to everything else in the village. Yeah, but still called Bouris Castle, and so it's. Yeah, so they go back many generations. Wow. But my grandfather was, I should say, tall, like 6'2" or something, fair eyes, fair hair. Mm-hmm. Didn't look like the rest of the people in the village. Like the rest of the people in the village are smaller, darker.
Sure.
He was a bit fairer relative to, say, my grandmother. Okay. So there's some suggestion that they might have been further up Baltic areas like Bulgaria or somewhere like this. There's some suggestion, but who knows?
Well, they're much fairer in my parts of the world as well.
I was going to say, I know he's from Tripoli, Petro. He's from Tripoli. He's fair, green eyes.
Yeah.
Angelo Berrios, another guy I know. Bill, that we know. So they're all quite fair. They've all got your sort of features, lighter skin.
Yeah, lighter skin. And I've got light-coloured eyes, but my grandmother has she had dark eyes, and smaller. But all my dad's brothers, Dad's had five brothers, all boys, and I got 4 boys myself and a grandson. But they all look like smaller, darker. If you saw them all lined up, it's funny when my kids were born, especially my older boys, they could never work out which one was the grandfather. Because all the boys, my dad's brothers and him all stand together and they all look exactly the same.
Yeah, kidding.
And you could be walking around, which one's, they call him Pop, but which one's Pop, they couldn't work it out.
Good genes.
Yeah, well, strong genes. Strong genes, yeah. Strong in terms of men, throwing males and strong in terms of the way everybody looks. I look a lot like my dad, but I obviously have my mum sort of in me as well. My brother is really big and my sister's quite tall too. So my sister would be about 5'11", and my brother he's 6'3" or something like that. My brother's a really big guy. So they probably took after my grandfather, I'd say, because of my mum's side. Mum's family quite small. So but it's cool. Me reflecting on my family. It's a bit like what we haven't done. What I'd like to do, but we haven't done one of those ancestry things.
Sure,
we've done it on mum's side because, but Greeks, they couldn't give a crap. It's all right. We won't worry about it.
Yeah.
We'll make stories up.
Yeah, wow.
We'll make something up down the track.
Yeah.
We don't need that. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, and we've had this discussion. So when my Uncle Bill was alive, he would tell us a story about where our name came from. And then my grandfather's nephew, who lives in Canada, we have Bouris in Canada, Chicago, and Australia.
Oh, wow.
Basically. So all the boys, when they left Greece, all went to Canada. And this is before the World War II. All went to Canada. And then some were allowed to stay in Canada because in those days they were real what they call WOPs, without a passport. And some were allowed to stay, some were kicked out, so they went then to Chicago. Some stayed in Chicago, and then my grandfather was kicked out of Chicago and he came to Australia. That's what happened. Wow. And so we have cousins sort of in those places. And my Uncle Michael, he's still alive. I have memories of him though standing up against that fireplace, Mum and Dad's fireplace, telling us the story where the name Bouris come from. But I also have memories of my Uncle Bill, Dad's second oldest brother, I think, also standing there telling us a story about where our name come from. But both stories are different.
Well, okay. Well, this the obvious next question.
Yeah.
Where does it come from?
Well, I'll tell you the most romantic story.
Is it shortened by any chance? Has it always been Bouris?
No. So our name was Peperi, Pepper.
Okay.
So in the village, you guys probably know this, but Albanians are really good at rock work.
Yep.
So they would bring the Albanians in to build the church. Mm-hmm. So where Dad's village is there's a mountain behind it, and on the top of the mountain is a church, Agia Marina, something Marina, same Marina, I think. But there's a Nicholas, and there's
we'll fact check this. There's
4 of them anyway, whatever.
Yeah,
and he was working on this. He was a stonemason. And his name was Peperi, and he was working. My great grandfather was working on this site. Allegedly, or apparently, he fell down off the scaffolding. Their own whatever their scaffolding was in those days, fell down off the building with some marble and went down the hill. And they said he's dead. That's it. Finish. He then walked back up some hours later with the marble, still carrying the marble. Yeah, wow. It's very romantic. And the Albanians called him, apparently Bouris is an Albanian word for like hard to kill, tough guy. Right. Not tough like tough dude, but hardy.
Yep. Right.
That type of person, like physically hardy. Yeah. And they gave that to him as his nickname. He became his nickname.
The Baratsukli.
Yeah. In the village.
Yep.
And then
which is a common thing.
When his kids were born, the priest, you go to the priest to register your births because there was no government thing there, and they registered by the nickname.
Yeah.
They didn't put down
that was common practice.
Just put his nickname.
Yep.
Yep.
And then when my dad was born, put down George and his 5 brothers by their nickname, and then that's the name, how our name became. Bouris.
Wow! So from Peperis to Bouris.
Yeah.
Wow.
And because it doesn't sound like it sounds a little bit Baltic. Boris,
I was going to say,
how you spell it.
Well, it's 2 syllable. So up north where we're from in Ipiro, the mountains, it's all 2 syllable. Biggest, Tsikas, Belos, Velas, Bouris. That's why I thought you would have been a northerner. And you mentioned mountains and Tsipro. I thought, oh shit, we've got one here. You've got one of ours. But
you got excited.
Yeah, I did get a bit excited. But then again, the people we know from Tripoli, most of them are 2 syllable as well. Oh, actually, maybe not. But yeah, that's what I thought. But what you said about your name, yeah, it's very common. So more papas. So my great-great-great-grandfather was a priest we're from Suli in the mountains. So he was a priest, and he had a couple of kids, whatever, and one was called Thanasi. Arthur. Arthur. And that's how my surname changed. They said, oh, who are you? I'm Thanasi's son. So Athanasiu means Arthurson in English, or MacArthur if you're Scottish. So our surname changed from Pappas to Athanasiu.
But that's pretty normal.
It's normal what you just said. Yeah, exactly.
And I believe because I want to believe it. It's like everything, but it sounds like a good story to me. But my Uncle Michael, his story was slightly different. His story was that.
What does Michael do for a living, by the way?
Michael's a dentist, and he's retired now. He's pretty old, but and he said that the name was named the boys, all boys in our family, like even beyond my father's generation, like his father's generation, all sons.
Yep.
And they were a bit of wild kids.
Okay.
And so Bouris meant the village said, it's not a Greek word, but so again, I don't know where the word came from, but they said cheeky boys, like
Yep.
mischievous.
Yeah, okay.
And that was
Yep.
bold, mischievous. That became our nickname. Again, we got our name Peperi changed. One agreement is we were Peperi,
Yeah.
and then the other agreement was we got a nickname. Just where the nickname originated from is the thing that's in dispute. But the second version was that they were just cheeky little boys, bold, always mucking up.
Yeah.
And that's how someone decided to call us that. So.
Wow.
I'll go
They're
with
two
either
pretty
story.
good stories, though.
Yeah, I'll go with either one.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I got 4 boys. I can tell you the cheeky bit's right.
Okay, they got that right. So you're leaning more towards that one.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, you got a bit of both. A bit of hardness. And
Yeah, a
bit
little
of
bit,
strength.
but the cheekiness is probably certainly
More
in
accurate.
relation to
Love
my
it.
sons.
Yeah. So you mentioned your ancestors. Were they involved with World War II, or did they leave before World War II?
So my grandfather came to Australia in the 30s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just before the war though, and he came with his elder son Nick and his brothers, not Nick's brothers, but my grandfather's brothers. So they're looking for a better life, to make some money,
Sure.
And they travelled first to Canada, and then went to the US, and then my grandfather ended up in Sydney. Clearly, there were people here he knew from his village, so that's usual. And he set up a cafe, then a sandwich shop, as well as a restaurant. And so when he made enough money in Sydney, Maroubra, in the city, in George Street.
Yep.
It's called the Jubilee Cafe. It was called across the road from the picture theatres in George Street. And then he had a cafe restaurant, which is sort of open at night. I've seen photographs of it, like everyone those days wore beautiful suits and stuff.
Yes.
And then when he used to go back every year with money and shoes and clothes, because they had no shoes and stuff. Obviously, see his wife, and she'd get pregnant and she'd have another kid. So he'd do this every year. But then my dad said there was a period from my dad reckons from mid 6, 7, 8 years of age, he never saw his father for a really long time.
Right.
Because at that stage he had 5 kids, and then my grandfather would just send a big chest box every year with clothes and stuff from Australia. But they were the war years, so he couldn't travel anyway. My dad left there during the Civil War in 48.
Okay.
So the whole family left because it's just too dangerous to stay in the village, because the communists versus nationalists, that story.
Well, I'm reading that book again. Remember we were talking about that book, Eleni?
Yeah, Lenny, I've seen the movie. You've seen the movie?
Yeah.
There's a movie.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I've got the book, and my dad says that book is very accurate about what he remembers happened in the village.
Yeah.
And my uncle Bill, my dad's second oldest brother, was one of the guerrillas against the communists.
Wow.
On behalf of the nationalists in the village.
With Napoleon Zervas, I think his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a highly sought after book. I went into a bookshop. I was telling you a few weeks ago, I remember. Went into a bookshop and asked for it, and they wanted like $250 for this book.
You're shitting me. I've got the book.
He's got it as well.
I bought it like 30 years ago or something when it first came out.
It is highly sought after and is just impossible to track down, apparently. So if you've got
It's
a
quite
copy
a
of
thick
it,
book, by the way.
Well, I'll say it now. I actually got 2. I was going to give it to
He
you
got
for
you
your
one.
birthday.
oh, look at this.
So
Thanks,
anyway.
Nick.
Grandpa,
Ruined the-
was it
Thanks,
now?
No, it's coming up. November. It's after mine, I think.
we're both close.
But it's a great movie too. I went to the movie with all my cousins, so I got a stack of cousins because all Dad's brothers had heaps of kids, and we a whole lot of us went to watch the movie at the theatre. It was a very good movie.
Yeah, brilliant. And he wrote another book called Greek Fire. I'm not sure if you read that.
I haven't read it, no.
Again, I bought 2 books.
But is it about? But it is about the Civil War.
It's a same author. So Nicholas Gatsuyanis, or Gage, I think he calls
Nicholas
himself.
Gage. Yeah, Gage.
So he's from a part of Ipiro, which is very close to where my parents are from. So we're very similar. We're very close to the Albanian border. It's about Aristotle Onassis and Maria Callas, their supposedly love affair. But it's like an autobiography with both of them. Fantastic. It's probably just as good, if not better, than Eleni.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I was younger, I thought Nicholas Gage was Nicholas Cage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same, the actor. Like
Yes,
I thought,
definitely.
because I didn't know.
Well, that's what I thought
your
when he told me
brother
about
Did
it.
you? Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, but it's a different person.
Yeah.
But
Amazing. And even in the book Eleni, when there was a scene where they took a lot of the young kids over the Iron Curtain, supposedly, one was called Athanasiou, same name as my surname, same spelling. So,
But like you mean, and did they take? I don't remember which part of Greece it was sort of supposed to be in, like in the book. I don't remember, it's that long ago. But was it near the border of Albania? Because Albania, of course, was part of the Soviet bloc.
it's still in the Greek part. It's called Ilia.
Okay, so but was that region near Albania or near
Albania?
Right.
Yeah, very close.
So they were taking him over to were taking him over to Albania.
Definitely, yeah. So pretty close, virtually. I think we discussed this in our World War II episode.
Yeah, we did actually.
Yeah, so very close.
Because they did take him over to Macedonia too, which was also
everywhere.
part of it.
They went through
Yugoslavia,
Moldova, Ukraine. There's a shitload in Ukraine now. Is that right? Part of Mariupol, which we will hear in one of our other episodes. Yeah, we haven't released it yet. Yeah. So the Greeks that were in the Iron Curtain supposedly were from this part, but a lot of them came back. So if you read the book in Lenny, a lot of them came back to Athens and so forth, but some didn't. Some ended up being, they were natural entrepreneurs. They built hotels and restaurants and so forth, and just they got Greek surnames. They kept the Greek language going, but it was their second language.
You've got to be pretty resilient to go through that and, come out being successful, don't you?
Yeah.
But I do recall reading somewhere that...
Actually, Romania was another one. I knew a family that went to Romania. They built hotels, but they ended up coming back. But because they'd built such thriving businesses in Romania, they sort of lived between both countries, but ended up staying there.
But I remember reading somewhere one of the reasons we had the Civil War in Greece was because a lot of the Greeks... Churchill did a deal with Stalin. He basically said, look, you the Russians form the Soviet, but you can have these countries, but you can't have Greece. But a lot of Greeks, you probably know, there's a lot of Greeks who into communism. They were communists, literally communists, like full-on lefties, and they wanted to join the Soviet bloc. Yep. And Churchill said, no. I want Greece because it's strategically important. Stalin, you leave it alone. So he gave Stalin everything above Greece and everything around it.
Yep.
But left Greece on its own. Of course, that's where the Civil War started. Like the communists said, no, we're unhappy. We wanted to become a communist country. The nationalists said, stuff that, no way. And that's sort of where the unrest created. And it was worse then. The Civil War was worse than the World War II.
Absolutely.
Definitely. It's
absolutely.
The Truman Doctrine that Truman wrote that essentially sent Brits, helped out the nationalists and so forth. Yeah. So it was a big thing. I said, no, we can't let Greece fall to the communists.
Yeah, totally. And in hindsight, I'm glad we didn't, because I don't know if you've been in any of those previously Soviet countries.
Yeah. Well, Albania is one of the poorest countries in Europe.
They're just crap.
And if they weren't under communists, who knows, they would have flourished. They've got beautiful coastline.
Oh, yeah, totally. There's nothing different from Albania. It's sort of really into the coastline.
Well, they're right across from my family's from Corfu, and we can see them from it's a couple of kilometres away at the closest point.
Corfu, that's an English settlement, isn't it?
Most recent, so it was under British protectorate for about 100 or so years, and rejoined Greece in 1864.
Because the English love it.
Absolutely, we play cricket there.
I know you do. I know there is actually cricket tournaments there against Greeks and English come to play cricket there.
Well, Philip was born there. Philip II.
And Prince Philip was born.
Well, I've been to Corfu and
have you really?
A couple of times, and last time I was there. To be honest, I didn't stay very long because I felt like I was in some part of London. Like it was
really
full of English tourists everywhere.
Okay.
And I just wasn't getting the vibe, So I went back to the Peloponneso and I stayed there. And I drove all the way around and just stayed in all different places and never on places down the south and the east of Greece. This was only 3 years ago, which is pre-COVID. And I enjoyed myself much better hanging out there.
You probably went to the wrong places. Next time you go, let me hook you up.
I'm sure I did because I booked it through a travel agent and I had a gun like villa thing like blah, blah, blah. Right. But I went in to get breakfast.
It wasn't the Pink Palace, was it?
No, you wouldn't have been in the...
I don't think so. But I went into the breakfast.
You probably would have had more fun.
Everybody there was Australian or English or something. And I thought, man, what am I doing in Greece? I can't smell his money. And I took someone with me. Yeah. And I was trying to give her the Greek vibe, and it wasn't very vibey, So I said, let's get the fuck out of here, and we left.
Classic.
Oh dear. Next time you go, I'm gonna hook you up. Don't worry.
But it is a good joint. Yeah. And I have stayed at the Palace, by the way.
Pink Palace.
Yeah. My first son was conceived
in
that building 42 years ago.
You kidding?
No.
Wow.
Everyone has a story about that joint.
Yeah.
Fair income.
I went there in, was it 95 when I was backpacking. Just discovered it by accident. Actually, no, from the airport. A guy had Pink Palace. Oh, Palace. Okay, nice.
You'd get pregnant there sitting on the chairs.
Yeah. Classic.
I was 25.
Really?
Jesus.
There you go.
24.
The good old Pink Palace.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
No, I love it. So look, more about let's talk about your dad now. So you came in so you had the
48.
cafe, 48 you talked about. And what happened after that? What work did he do when he was in?
Dad worked Dad was only young, so he would have been a young teenager. He went to school in Burke Street High. With his younger brother, Arthur. The other boys, his older brothers, were all working in his dad's restaurant, cafe. And they obviously couldn't speak English, whatever. And they stayed at 4th Street High for a while. And I think Dad said he stayed for about 18 months, but he said in the end he couldn't stand it. He didn't know what he was doing. He couldn't speak English. He didn't know what the hell was going on. He said so he left and went to work at his dad's cafe restaurant. And that's where he met my mum. So my mum got a second job to support her two sisters. Yeah. And because her two sisters lived with her. And my mum was only like 17 or 18 or something like that. Dad met mum there, and my mum taught Dad to speak English. The story is that my mum initially, she thought my dad was a bit arrogant because he didn't really talk to her. And she then was going to go out with his older brother, John, invited mum out for whatever, dinner, coffee, whatever it is. My during that, they all worked in the kitchen, and Uncle John threw a knife at Uncle Bill. And so my mum said, no, I don't really think I want to go with him. And the only one left was George, and Arthur was too young, so she decided that maybe George is the nice one. That's Dad. And then, so she taught Dad to speak English. She went out with him, and they were married until Mum passed away 3 years ago, but they were married for 60-odd years. So they had a very successful marriage.
And your mother was Irish, wasn't she?
Yeah.
How did that work out for her, that sort of culture shock between the Irish and the Greek? Or was it quite similar? My mum was really bright, very garrulous. He couldn't stop talking. Dad didn't speak much, still doesn't speak much. He's quiet. Mum tried to learn Greek, but didn't sort of work out that well. But in our family, most of the other brothers, they had either women from Eastern Europe or Greek ones. Right. And so, Mum had to sort of mix in with everybody. Yep. But she's pretty strong, a strong personality, really strong personality. So, it worked out. It worked out well, but except that Dad left the business and moved out to the western suburbs because his father wasn't all that happy that he was marrying my mother. That was going to be my next question. How was it taken by the family?
Not so good, outside? But his brothers didn't care. But my grandfather and grandmother did not go to my parents' wedding.
Right.
Yeah, but and the boys were banned too. His other sons, but as I understand, they all snuck to the wedding. They went to the wedding, except for the oldest brother, who was much older. Uncle Nick was much older than Dad, and probably more closely aligned to the traditional values of his father and mother, and so he didn't go. But all the younger boys all went to Dad's wedding and Mum and Dad's wedding.
So how did that affect your dad's relationship with his family, and I guess by extension, how did that affect you and the way that you grew up?
Well, I didn't know about it. So for me, I love my grandfather, my grandmother. No problem.
So you had the relationship with them?
Yeah, totally. We have like Christmas, weddings, funerals, birthdays, stuff.
So they got on with it, basically. They accepted it.
Got on with it, but it wasn't the way my grandparents wanted it. So, and the old school traditions, the younger son lives with the family until the parents die, then he gets the house and the whole story. And if you want to get some inheritance, you got to work in the business. You got to earn it. Yeah, makes sense. That's fair enough. Yeah. But Dad was happy to, not sacrifice, but put all that on hold just to live a new life with my mother. Wow. And we moved. They moved out to the western suburbs in Punchbowl, and they got themselves a house. And my dad did well for himself. Worked hard. He's not super wealthy or anything, but he worked hard and got new houses and built a new house and sold that one, do the next one, do it up, blah blah blah, the usual story. And now he lives in a nice house in Mossman, and
good on him.
He's very happy.
Yeah, fantastic.
That work ethic, gee, we've spoken about it so many times. Every single guest that we've had on has this story about the migrant family coming out here and starting from zero. Steve Georgalis, for example, the Greek rugby league coach, for those who didn't hear that episode, saying that his old man slept on park benches when he first came out here, didn't have anywhere to live.
I know his dad, and I don't know if his dad's still alive, but his dad used to work at Beppy's.
Yeah, right.
And old Mr. Georgalis used to always come up to me, and I used to go to lunch with Beppy's with Nick Politis a lot.
Yeah.
back in the old days, and his dad worked there, and he was so proud of Steve.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy how proud he was of Steve, always talking about Steve.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't surprise me that he sacrificed a lot of stuff for Steve. And I don't know if Steve's got brothers and sisters, but like sacrificed a lot for the family.
Yeah.
He was such a charming old fella.
Yeah.
It's good that he's still alive. I'm happy about that.
Yeah. But what about your mum? What a strong woman your mum would have been.
Oh, she's strong.
Like, we're talking about the Greeks, so what about her?
She's mate.
She would have been rejected
woman,
by
like,
the
so
in-laws,
strong, like crazy strong, crazy ambitious, crazy driven.
So what part, was she born in Australia or Ireland?
Born in Australia.
Oh, she was, okay.
Family from Cork. So and she's got two younger sisters.
Okay.
And my mum, she had a tough upbringing. She decided that she wasn't going to have alcohol in the family, and she wasn't going to have gambling in the family because her father was a gambler, and he was a bookmaker by profession, but a gambler as well. And but also there was alcohol, and which is not unusual in that sort of environment. And so she was clear on what she wanted. And my dad doesn't really drink. I mean, he might have a drink here and there, but like not a drinker, definitely not a gambler. Although he might have a bet in the old days, he might have had a bet on the social footy bet or something like that, at work or something. But not a gambler. And Mum was pretty clear on what she wanted, and what she wanted for her kids, and the sort of life she wanted, legacy she wanted to leave, and went about that with a great deal of focus. That was her purpose in life. And never relented, ever. Never. Even when she was, like she had motor neuron disease, it was a pretty crappy disease. And when she was dying, Dad and I were there in the room when she was dying, when she took her last breath. And even then, she was fighting to breathe. Like, you could see, I knew what she was fighting it. Like, there's no way she was going to give up. Tough as nails, but in a nice way, not in a...
Just driven, determined.
Just really,
focused.
softly spoken. Always good advice for me and my brother and sister. And really was good for Dad. Like a great woman for my father to sort of learn a lot of stuff from. Like he was a good, tough, hard worker, but she sort of gave a lot of energy to his life.
It sounds like you have had a really close connection to your mum. Like, what was that?
Both Dad and Mum. Like, I see Dad every Saturday. Like, I'll go see him on Saturday. I hang out with Dad, the old man. Both, but different type personalities. It's funny sometimes when I think the other day, I was thinking I had a few things I was going through my head, give me the shits, the world economy, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. Yep. And I got complex businesses, not so much the podcast, but my financial services business is quite a complex business, relies on world economies. And I was just thinking, I wish Mum was alive because I could go and talk to her. Because I could talk to my mum about, she read the Financial Review every day. She wasn't in the Financial, but she knew everything. She read the Herald from back to front. In those days, the Herald was a different sort of paper.
Yep. Did she read it because she knew you were in the industry? Or
no, just Mum read everything. Okay. And she listened to the ABC News all day, and music at night. But she was well-read, well-educated in her own, the way she educated herself, but well-educated, knew about stuff. And I could talk to her about something and she would get it. And she'd always have some advice for me. She wasn't sure to give me advice. But sometimes you just need someone to talk to, but just who's not going to judge you.
Or offload.
But you don't want to talk to your brother or your sister or your business partners, whatever. You just want to talk to your mum or your dad. And Dad, on the other hand, is different. Like, he wants to talk about his garden, what he's doing in terms of renovating the house. My dad's nearly 90. And he still renovates the house. He's still painting. He told me last night, what I said we do today, Dad? I painted this and that and the other, and I've started rain to put a tarp over. Like, Dad's just a worker.
Yeah.
And relentless worker. Mum was a thinker and a learner. Learned about everything, whether it was something to do with her, what she did, or not something to do with what she did. She didn't care. And I was therefore I'm very lucky. My mother's family are all musicians, like pianists, violinists, in the Conservatorium of Music, full on. As a result of that, we all learned music, and Mum was very much into music at those levels, at all types of music at those levels, very musical, and also very interested in any form of education.
Yeah. Wow. Just as a side note, I went to get a haircut from my sister. and one of her clients, I said, well, getting Mark Bouris on the show, she goes, oh, I taught him piano.
Really?
I said, really? But apparently it was one lesson.
No, so I learned piano from a lady called Mrs. Donovan.
Apparently it was one lesson with this lady.
Yeah.
You were doing it for your mum, or you play for your mum or something like that?
No, I know the one you're talking about. I know the one. She's from Bondi or something like this. Yeah, I know the one. Yeah. So when I learned piano as a kid, a young man, and I did piano right through to year 12, I learned classical piano, and one of my favourite pieces was the Hungarian Rhapsody. And it's quite a complicated piece. When I was younger, I had no problem with it, and I did that in my exams. That was my piece for the exams. And when my mother got motor neuron disease, I just stopped touching the piano for maybe 20 odd years. I have a piano at home, but I just didn't play it for 20 odd years. And when Mum first got really sick, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and play my mother the Hungarian Rhapsody again. I'm going to bring it to my house and play it for her before she dies. And I sat down and started trying to practice it, and my God, it was so complicated. And as you get older, it's harder to remember stuff and learn things, because just your brain doesn't work as well as it does when you're a kid, I guess. And I engaged this lady. She was like, she's Polish or Russian or something like this. I remember she was
Annabelle, maybe?
Yeah, that's her name.
Is that her name?
Yeah. So I went up to her in Bondi, and I had one lesson. But I got so caught up in work and stuff, I just couldn't make. They were in the afternoon at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock. I just couldn't get there.
Wow.
In the end, I stopped trying. And
text my sister just to confirm what her name is.
I did. I had one lesson with this woman. Yeah.
There you go.
But when I learnt properly, I learnt at the school I went to, and I learnt. Then outside of school, I had another teacher, Mrs. Donovan, who taught me for like 6 or 7 years. So I would practice every day. This was like full on piano, but like full on lessons, and I used to go to Stedfords and all sorts of things. My mum used to take me on the train. We used to go into the city. I used to play at Stedfords. At the end of the year, the school would have a
showcase,
a show thing, and someone would sing, and there'll be this group dancing, whatever. And I used to play the piano. So I used to have to play classical pieces to the whole school. Yeah, no, Mum was right. My brother's a very good musician. I never had an ear for piano. I could just read music, play it in a learning sense. I could remember the pieces, so I didn't have to, after a while, after practice enough, I could remember everything. My brother has his ear, and he can hear a song and he can play it. I never had that. I was not a natural musician, which probably disappointed my mum, because she wanted me to be natural, but I wasn't natural. I was just
but you had
mathematically
at it. You played the piano?
No, I can play it. Yeah. I can still play. I can still play
impressive. Far out.
Yeah.
You still do it for pleasure at all?
Yeah, I do. It relaxes me. But I'm hardly perfect, but I do it to keep in touch, and I think it's good for your brain. It's good cognitively. It's very good for your brain.
Definitely. I think I learnt the other day how to play "Oh When the Saints." Actually, that was it, one-handed, and I still forget it.
We are in the St George area, so it's not. Tell me that's not the reason. Dragons, my God.
Well, that's. I mean, he's a Dragons fan, but
you don't want to hear what he is.
Don't tell me he's South. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Whole family.
Glory. But that's unplayable.
No, don't go, Mark. Stick around, mate.
Please don't leave. We're all Greeks here, mate. We're all Greeks. That's the
well.
We'll get to league in a second.
Nick Politis is not going to think much of that. So if he knows I'm on this with you and you're a South supporter, I don't know. Maybe I could get us to join the board.
Well, we got a few photos with him the other night.
I saw you.
Yeah. He's a good man.
Yeah, and by the way, I sent him a photo of the Greek team yesterday with Kithero across the chest, because there were some photos on something I saw, and I photoshopped it, and then I sent it off to him. Yeah. He's away though at the moment.
I think he's over there, isn't he? Watching.
Actually, he was there. Yeah, he was there.
He was going to go there, because I saw his partner Fiona just today. I was driving past, and she was in her overalls renovating a building somewhere in Darlinghurst, and she said, "I can't wait for Nick to get home tomorrow." So so he must be coming home soon.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I don't know, do we talk about rugby league now?
We may as well. I mean, we've brought it up again. I'm a diehard rabbit. I used to work there. It's in my, actually the first job that my grandfather had when he came out. He was working at the Leagues Club during the last, the golden era, the 60s and 70s and whatnot. A lot of the people that we've had on the show have said previously that, people like Mario Fennick, for example, and George Paponis, we were into rugby league because we wanted to fit in. Is that how you got into it as well, or was it a little bit different
Well,
for
when
you?
I was at school, the answer to that is yes. So I was at a primary school, and then all the different primary schools in the area went to another school for fourth class. I don't know, 8 or 9, I don't know how old you are at that stage.
What school was it?
A school called St John's Lakemba, in Lakemba. So I went to the school, and all these other kids came from different schools, and I got this friend. I made friends with this kid, and his name was Steve White. And the school announced that there's rugby league tryouts for the school. And he said to me he was going to play rugby league because his father was in the league, and he's an Aussie kid. He's my friend, and I wanted to do the same as him. So I went home, told my parents, and Mum is an all girls family and musicians. They don't know anything about sport at all, nothing. And Mum said, "What is this game?" Because it wasn't Instagram.
This is barbarism.
What the hell? And my father, being Greek, what would he know about rugby league at the time? But he knew about soccer. And I said, I want to play. And they said, okay, well, you can play if you want. So I went to play footy. So I played to be part of what my friends were doing. I was only 8 or 9 or something. But what does rugby league mean to me? Rugby league, for me, when I reflect back on it, has allowed me to connect with all sorts of people around George Paponis. By way of example, if I wasn't involved in rugby league, I would never have met George Paponis. Nick Politis, Nick Pappas from South. I mean, these people I met because of football, and also players and supporters and sponsors, all sorts of people. And so it's been a fantastic opportunity to connect with people. Rugby league. I mean, apart from the fact I love the physicality, I love the sport.
Yep.
But
It's a
now I don't
gladiatorial
play.
sport.
Sorry.
It's like a gladiatorial sport.
Very much so. It's like
Collisions
gladiators in a stadium,
ring. Yeah.
And apart from that, I love the physicality of it, etc. But what I've got from it, out of that they're transactional things. You get that every week. It's different every week. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But what probably the best thing has brought to me is meeting people, and which I would never have got to meet without football.
Yeah.
So connecting with all types
people.
of the community.
Yeah, totally. And all sorts
areas.
of communities. People from the western suburbs where I grew up, people from the east suburbs where I live now.
Different cultures.
Greek families, going to the Greek launch the other night, state of origin. I got to meet politicians from my sponsorship days. And, I got to meet elite sports people who were playing footy. Like Brad Fittler and all those sorts of people. I met elite people in a
It's a
sporting
great
sense.
equaliser, isn't it? In a sense.
And
It's like a sense of a belonging as well. You're part of a community.
I'm part of that community, and I identify with being part of that community. It's sort of quite important to me, especially as I get older. When the games are on in Sydney, just to go there and sit with the guys from the Roosters, our board, for example, our board of directors. I'm on the board of directors of the Roosters. Just being able to sit with them is pretty cool. It's sort of something you do as you get older.
Well, like we said, we're like a community being. We're not like the village mentality. We need to be around people. We learn off people. So
it's my
what
tribe
rugby league is. Yeah,
to
exactly.
some extent. It's sort of my tribe. I've got lots of different tribes, but that's definitely one of those.
It's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that we posted after that night, the moniker goes that, rugby league people are good people. That's been said for years. And then we went to the Greek rugby league thing, and it's like, mate, if rugby league people are good people, Greek rugby league people are exceptional. Because it just felt like, okay, this is our community already.
Yeah.
And then there's this added layer to it as well.
Sure. Yeah.
How comfortable, for me personally, being there, it was just so comfortable to be.
I think you looked over and you said, Nick, I think this is our people. We just felt it was like our family.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah, I knew a lot of people there. I guess you guys did too. You're looking around the room, you say, there's so-and-so and so-and-so, and you sort of feel connected. And I think being connected is important. Having a sense of connection is important. Definitely. That's what community is all about. And we all got different communities, sub-communities. But for me, an enduring one has been rugby league. So that's been a community I've been part of since I've been 8 years of age. Wow. And it's not something I want to ever give away.
Yeah. Well, back to that. So was it the St John's, the Lakemba, your first team you played for, school footy?
I played for St John's. We call the St John's Eagles.
Okay. And was it a club team or the school team?
It was our school team that played in the club competition. So we played in the Canterbury Banks competition.
Are they still there, St John's Eagles? I think they are, actually.
It sounds familiar, actually.
And then we turned into brothers, a team called Brothers.
Okay.
So when you got older, when you left school, you became part of brothers. And I think today, St John's, the team, is now absorbed into the brothers. The brothers are broader, young, and go right from older A grade right down to under 12s or under 10s or something. And the St John's kids all play for them. Right. But you don't have to go to St John's to play for them. You can go to any come from anywhere to play for brothers.
And what position did you play? Where were you?
I played in the forwards. I was a lock or a second row. I was always a pretty big kid, relatively speaking, for my age. And in those days, if you were 13 stone, you were big. When you were 16, I was close enough. 13 stone when I was 16. I was 12 stone 10. I don't know what it is in kilograms. Probably 82 kilos or something.
Look that up, mate.
But I was always big. I didn't mature quickly, but I was just a big kid. And I played with some guys. Ended up playing State of Origin first grade for the Bulldogs.
Kidding?
No. Graham Hughes. I was in the same. Me and Graham on the same side. But he was always a bit older than me. He was a year older than me. But we're in the same year because I was young for my year.
Right.
And then when we played in the same weight divisions, and then when he
because it was weight divisions.
It was weight division.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, totally. And then I was in his weight division.
Shit.
And we're in the same class.
Were you 82 kilos at 16? That's 13 stone.
Yeah, I was a big kid. Yeah.
So my son, he's nearly 17 and he's 65.
Yeah, I was big. I was a big kid.
So you were massive.
So I ended up playing, I played SG ball and stuff like that. Like I played...
For who? Bulldogs?
Yeah. Well, they were called the Berries in those days, but for Bulldogs. For Canterbury Banks anyway. Yeah,
I
was in the SG ball, sorry?
Bulldog supporter growing up?
Yeah, well, I was until I left. So what happened is I went to university at 17, so because I was pretty young for my year. So I ended up moving over to the suburbs because just travel, time, cost, car, the whole thing,
Where in the eastern suburbs?
I moved to Bondi first, and then I just stayed at the university for a while, like the accommodation university, student accommodation. Then I went back to Bondi, but just a sheer little room, basically just room above a gym, a really famous gym, Paul Graham's gym, the bodybuilder guy. I lived on just above that, but I moved there pretty young. So
it's not the boxing in Bondi, the boxing.
Yeah,
gym.
It's on top of Bondi Boxing.
Are you kidding?
No.
Wow.
And just up the road from the Royal Hotel, just up the road.
Is that where Larry Papadopoulos is?
No, Larry's at King's Cross Boxing in King's Cross.
Okay.
Larry's at I think it's called Boxing Works in King's Cross, but it's an MMA gym.
Okay.
He does a bit of boxing, but it's mostly an MMA. I train there now with Larry.
All right.
Larry and I are mates, yeah.
Because, again, we're going off track again, but a guy called Peter Meneses, I don't know if you know him, he's a personal trainer. He had some sort of rugby league personal training clinic about 2 weeks ago.
Well, Larry's one of Australia's great wrestlers. So Larry Papadopoulos is...
was he an MMA fighter in the 80s?
He was an MMA fighter in the early 90s, won a world title before UFC was around, obviously. Heavyweight division. But prior to that, in the lighter weight divisions, he was a kickboxer, very famous kickboxer on a global stage, particularly in Japan. But Larry's got a black belt in just about everything, judo, karate, jiu-jitsu, everything. And he owns Boxing Works in the Cross. And they have boxing classes there, but I do jiu-jitsu with Larry there. And in fact, one of the reasons I got a sore neck is Larry's 110 kilos, and he and I train together twice a week, and I always end up having a really sore neck after. But yeah, he's the Roosters wrestling coach.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's a wrestling coach of the Roosters, and we were one of the first clubs to do wrestling. Melbourne was the first. Then Larry came to us, and we started wrestling around about second or third, and Parramatta started doing it first before us. But yeah, so Larry's adapted wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling for rugby league. Yeah, but not in a way that hurts people, more in a way to teach our guys how not to get hurt. Where to put your head, where to put your feet, how to resist being tackled and or how to effect a tackle. I think, and I've been saying it for a long time, around 40% of the head injuries that first grade players get is not from someone hitting him in the head, but from poor tackling technique, where they put their head into someone's
Wrong
hip,
place.
for example.
Absolutely.
And I've had this conversation with Larry a few times, and he said, "Yeah, Mark," he said, "rugby league or all contact sports are effectively wrestling. Just that someone's running instead of standing in front of you, they're running at you. And unless you know how to wrestle properly, you won't know how to tackle properly. There's no such thing as tackling as such. It's just wrestling someone to the ground.
Yep.
And you've got to have good technique, and you've got to have your head up around their chest if you're going to try and put them on the ground, and you've got to use your shoulders and your feet, and you've got to turn them. use their momentum to put them on the ground, taking the least amount of risk yourself, particularly around the head and neck.
Well, we did an episode a little while back. I don't know if you know about the sport of Pagration.
No.
Pancration, which is the ancient Greek.
Pancration.
Yeah, so we had Con Papi and Costa.
Say it in English, mate.
Yes. My Greek's coming out. But, a lot of that is just about using the mechanics, the motion to be able to bring that individual down in the easiest possible way, which is part of it. It makes sense that, that it's probably safer.
It's things like, when the Spartans learnt it as well. So if you lost your shield or your spear, then you weren't useless. You had to use pancration to
all bets are
defend
off.
yourself with someone with a spear coming at you. You know what to do and all that sort of
Well,
stuff.
Larry's an expert in pancration. So you should get him on the podcast. He's a really interesting character when it comes to martial arts. There's not much he doesn't know about martial arts. When I had John Kavanagh came onto my podcast. John Kavanagh is Conor McGregor's coach.
McGregor's, yeah.
And when John was out here, John actually wanted to meet Larry Papadopoulos. That's how well known he is around the world. I've had Alex Volkanovski ask me, can you introduce me to Larry Papadopoulos? So he's very well known around the world as being, as
like
one of the guys.
Pioneer of Australia.
Oh, totally. And he's an interesting dude. Like, there's not much he hasn't seen or known or experienced when it comes to all martial arts relative to what goes on in Australia. Plus, he's competed all around the world, in Russia, all sorts of places. And his grandfather, I think, is Russian. They're Greek Russians. Yeah,
Maybe what I mentioned earlier, they probably 1940s went up.
Yep. And he's got
connections.
He's got lots of stories about, his background and his grandparents and etc. Particularly with the Russian input.
Okay, well maybe we'll reach out to him.
I'm happy to give you his mobile number. He's a good dude, like a really.
We should definitely talk to him.
Guy.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, sounds good.
Well, going back slightly to the rugby league. I mean, you mentioned you played SG ball for Canterbury. Born in Punch Bowl. Why Easts? What happened?
Well, I tell you what happened. I left Punch Bowl. I went to these suburbs.
He's laughing. I'm asking the question seriously.
No, but it's a good question
South
because people
supporter.
think that I just flip flop around the joint, and I didn't. So I went and lived in these suburbs, and I lived there, for the rest of my life. And I sort of dropped off rugby league a little bit because there wasn't access to the games like there is today. I mean, I didn't have a telly, and I was a poor student. Bottom line, I had no money, I had no access to footy. I would have had to go to Belmore to watch a game.
Sure.
It was a bit too hard. Even though I had mates who were playing for the Bulldogs, or Canterbury at the time, I would watch a game here and there if they were over my way, etc. And then the Super League war kicked off. And that was in the mid-90s. And Canterbury went with Super League. And I felt like it was a sellout. I really wasn't happy with it.
So that's when it happened for you.
Yeah, and I remember ringing Graham Hughes, and his nickname's Heaps. And I rang up Heaps and I said, mate, that's fucked what you're doing. Like, I'm not happy,
Well, okay.
So as a result of Super League, I felt a bit alienated from the whole thing. And I was living in these suburbs. I knew David Gingell, a good mate of mine. David was on the board of Roosters. James Pack was on the board of Roosters. Nick Politis, obviously, the chairman, and other people on the board. And I was invited to a Roosters function in late 98, around that territory. 97. And at this stage, the Super League war was still going, but it was starting to peter out a bit, and they were just going to do a deal. And as you know, Kerry Packer was in favour of the traditional clubs. Nick Politis, as were the South guys, George Pickens, etc., were in favour of the traditional clubs. And I thought, well, that makes sense to me because I preferred the traditional clubs. And I didn't like what had happened. It split the whole game up, and I didn't like it. And I was offered an opportunity to sponsor New South Wales because Tui's had dropped out because of the Super League war, because a lot of players couldn't play in the ARL State of Origin.
So this is how Wizard got involved with State of Origin.
And I had Wizard, and I decided to do a deal to do the State of Origin, and I met Nick through that. We became good friends. I went to a few functions. He invited me to functions, blah, blah, blah. And Gingell was my mate. At this stage, Packer was not involved in my business. I just owned it myself. And then Nick said to me, look, I've got some retirements at the board. Would you be interested in taking a board seat? And he knew I loved rugby league. And I said, yeah, I would be, because I wouldn't say I was following East at the time. But I was interested in what East were doing because I live in there. I've been living there for 15, 16 years already. And I've lived there now for the best part of my life. So I've lived there for 48 years or something. And I joined the board, and I've been there for 20 odd years now.
Wow.
So
and what a period to be involved as well.
Oh,
it's
cool period, yeah. I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, Nick's an amazing chairman, though. Like, look, you're not going to... For me, there's no better chairman in the rugby league than Nick Politis. I mean, Nick Pappas is a good friend. That's ours. But Politis...
He's a good operator.
Oh, man, like...
So tell us about him. What's good about him?
Well, he
What's he like, actually? We've met him briefly, but...
He's a very dedicated person to what he believes in, extremely dedicated. He puts in, what I mean by that, not just effort, but money, like big time.
He puts his money where his mouth
totally,
is.
but not just here's 20 grand.
Do some water.
Your water be good, yeah.
We're just topping up.
but puts his money, like big time money, like whatever it takes, he'll put in, you know.
Yeah. I mean, he put money. He's the major sponsor for the Greek side.
Totally,
you know,
he
great.
put the Kithera sign on there,
Yeah.
and nothing in it for him. He doesn't care like that. Thanks very much. He's extremely passionate about what he does. And he'll go to war.
Yeah.
I mean, like if those three people, Politis, probably Arco from Manly, Nick Pappas and Piggins, etc. from Souths, and Kerry Packer, they actually went to war with Murdoch. It was a war.
And you just think about those names, like that's insane. Like, would you come up against that group of individuals?
Well, that's what you had to have to go against Murdoch.
Exactly.
The biggest media guy in the world.
Yeah.
And try and unpick a game. And I understand what he's doing. Like, it was an opportunity. I got it. I understand all that. But Politis is the sort of bloke you go to war with. Literally go to war with. If you go to war with him, he's there. Like,
he's in war mode.
That's it. And there's no one better. There's literally no one better. He would just die for his principles. Well, he's been fantastic for a club. So he and I, when we were both single in the early 2000s, we used to travel a lot. We travelled all around the world together. Like I'd ring him up, he'd ring me up, and I'd say, "Where are you?" And he'd say, "I'm in Hong Kong." And I'd say, "Well, I'll meet you in Austria." And we'd meet in Austria. One time, I was in Hong Kong actually, and he said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Hong Kong." I said, he said, "What are you doing after that?" I said, "I don't know, man. I'll go somewhere." So we had a pact that we would go somewhere different every year.
Yep.
Some place that we'd never been or no one else had ever been. He said, let's go to, let's go to Slovenia. I said, where? I've never heard of the place. Slovenia, where's that? He said, not far from Austria. Yeah. He says, near Italy. He says, very like Italian. I said, okay. So I said, I'll book a plane. I flew to Vienna, and he flew to Vienna from Australia, or wherever he was. I don't know where he was. We met
I can feel where this is going, by the way.
And he said to me, he said, well, how are we going to go? I said, well, I'm not letting you drive because I don't want him driving me anywhere. And I said, I'll drive. We'll rent a car. So we rent a car. We're driving. No sat nav or anything like that. And he had to be the navigator, right?
Yeah.
And he was hopeless. And his eyes weren't perfect at the time.
Yeah.
So instead of going right, we went left at this particular junction. And instead of ending in Slovenia, we ended up in Slovakia.
Okay.
I'm not joking. And we ended up
same.
Sort of, but not really. And we ended up in this place called Bratislava, which is the capital of Slovakia.
Okay.
Instead of Slovenia. Slovenia's on the coast. Czechoslovakia, Slovakia was part of Czechoslovakia, but it's on the other side of the river, the Danube.
Yeah.
And we're in the main city. And I said, well, where are we going to stay? He said, well, we'll stay at this place, Intercontinental. And we stayed in the Continental in the old city, and so we did this sort of stuff often. We did every year. We went to Poland together. We Amsterdam. We went and watched the World Cup. We went and watched the European Cup final in Rotterdam. We used to do all this weird stuff, and then we would go to Greece at the end of it.
Right?
Yeah,
end up in Greece.
He said, we go back. We finish off in Greece. We go to Athens. We stay in Athens and. We'd just hang out in, the Grand Bataan or the Hilton or something like that, anywhere with a view of the Acropolis, and have fun. And but things change. We meet girls and partners and stuff like that, and then that sort of fun sort of dies off. Yeah. But we did that for years.
Wow.
For years, yeah. When we went to Prague together, as I went to Poland together. Poland was a pretty interesting place. Hung out in Amsterdam for a while, watching, and down to Rotterdam to watch the European finals. We did some weird stuff, but it was cool.
So you did like your backpacking trips with Nick Politis, basically.
And we left it to a long time. We did it late in life. So I was definitely in my 40s, late 40s, and he would have been probably in his 60s.
Yeah.
And he's like for a bloke, he's like 80 something, and he's amazingly energetic. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know, like he's incredibly energetic. His mum lived to I think like 98 or 99.
Yeah.
So he's obviously got longevity genes in him. His dad died young, but Nick's in good nick, literally really good nick. And he's
and his mind's just sharp.
He's a good sharp mind.
Doesn't forget anything.
Well read. He doesn't seem to get sick. He's physically good. He doesn't overexercise anything like that, but he's in good shape, relatively speaking.
And he's involved. He's still,
completely engaged in everything he does. Everything he does.
But he adds value too, not just in
100%.
No, he doesn't stuff around. And as I said, he's the best guy to go to war with. As like him and Kerry were quite formidable. I mean, you had Phil Gould to that. Gould was on that side, and you had George Piggins to that. My God, like you're talking about some serious players here. And put Arco in there as well, like for Manly. Like my God, that was a pretty serious team. It was just good watching that. From my point of view, being an observer.
That's interesting that it was the Super League war that did it for you.
It was a Super League war. And out of that came opportunity for me. So not only to join the board of the Roosters, but also to sponsor New South Wales because Tui's pulled out. And I did that for 10 years. I sponsored New South Wales for 10 years.
Wizard was synonymous with the Blues for for that period.
The Wizard Blues. And then off the back of that, we talk about wide rugby league. Off the back of that, I met people like Ray Warren.
Yeah.
legend character.
Good people, cool people, and that's a real privilege for me to get to meet those sorts of people. Yeah. And I Jack Gibson, I knew Jack quite well.
Yeah, right.
Lots of people, and when I say connection, it wasn't just connecting; it was a privilege of being able to meet people who ordinarily just read about. If I was just not involved, I wouldn't meet these people, and I got to meet these wonderful, talented people who made my life richer.
Yeah, and they're just passionate about what they're.
They're all passionate. A lot of them, but in different ways. Funny, Jack hardly said anything, but
we hear.
But it was very influential.
But he enriched your life. I don't know why, but he just did for me anyway, and I became good friends with him. Yeah, and right up to the time he passed away. So, so rugby league was a very important part of my life. Still is an important part of my life. But when I was a younger man, my God, I was so lucky.
I mean, we've spoken briefly about Wizard and whatnot. How do you go from being the son of this Greek migrant and Irish, Irish offspring, I guess, to being this high-profile businessman in Australia, to being able to do things like sponsoring the Blues, and doing all that sort of thing? Wizard was the first.
I actually don't know. People ask me this all the time. I can't. I find it hard to articulate. Maybe when people say how much luck is involved, I'm happy to tell you a whole lot of luck.
Yeah. Well, what did you study to begin with? What was it?
I did commerce law at university.
Okay,
but it wasn't anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Nah, that didn't do anything for me. I don't know. I think serendipity. I don't know.
You might have given us the answers already. You said your dad was a hard worker.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Ethics that you learned from your parents that you probably didn't realise.
But they didn't get me to meet Kerry Packer. They didn't bring Kerry to me. I didn't go to see Kerry
maybe
Packer.
they gave you the values that you don't.
But everybody works hard. You guys work hard. John at the end, he works hard. I just think that it was like fate. It was like my destiny. I was meant to meet these people, and then I was meant forward to have a show called The Mentor, and I was meant to pass it forward, pay it forward to everybody who listens to me. And I was meant to come to this and talk to you so your listeners can hear these stories. The most interesting things that we can pass on is stories. Yep. And that's been going on since Homer and before. And maybe I'm meant to be a modern version of that,
Maybe you are.
I'm not at a Homeric level, but it doesn't matter. It's all of us. That's why podcasts are so popular, because we're just storytelling.
Yeah.
And storytelling is still the most powerful. The technology is different, but storytelling is still the most powerful thing on the planet. And we all get inspired by good stories. And that's probably why it was my destiny to be a storyteller.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's sounding as though your successes in business is really almost a means to an end to be able to tell these stories.
For me, it is, yes.
Yeah.
And people say, I did the Australian Story, and many years ago, and the lady asked me a question. She said, what is the legacy, your greatest legacy? And I said, it's not the money I got for selling Wizard or whatever. It's not that. It's the people I watched get better at what they do. in my environment and the people I met.
Yeah.
And all of those give me great content. And I don't mean in a sense I want content for podcasts. I mean in content for my own life and for me to be able to pay forward what I've learned, what I've experienced. And I think sometimes there are people who are destined to meet all these people because not everyone can meet everybody. It's not possible. But somebody needs to meet as many people as they can and then sort of wrap it up. Yeah. And pass it forward, pay it forward, and we're not going to write it on a parchment and have it hidden somewhere so that it gets discovered 1,000 years later. Yeah. It's real time now. We talk about it daily, and we do it on our YouTube. We do it on. I do it by talking to you guys. I mean, even the other day, I went out and talked to. I went on the Spanions podcast. I've been on Russell Manz's podcast. I mean, I've been on different people's podcasts, and they're all storytellers too. We're all sharing stories. I'm doing it with you guys at Ouzo Talk.
Definitely.
Sharing stories.
That is what it's about at the end of the day. I mean, for us, it's obviously with the Greek community, the Greek diaspora, and people who are interested in that.
And they love a story.
Absolutely.
Especially Greeks.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Mythos.
Correct.
Whether it's true or not true, it doesn't matter.
Well, at the end of the day,
I would say in Lithia. So I would say it's true, okay? But
as long as it passes the time.
But it doesn't matter.
But it's sitting around with a drink and having your mezé and doing,
Totally.
That's where the best knowledge is usually passed on.
And we learn. We don't invent anything. For me, we invent technology, but we don't really invent anything. Everything's the same. There's nothing new, and we just put a different angle on it. But we have to learn about it. Like if you put yourself in a room, a young kid in a room, from the age of as soon as they were sort of conscious, and you never let them out of that room for the whole life. They're not naturally going to go out and create anything.
Yeah.
But if you expose them to lots of different things, then they will create something from what they've learnt.
Yeah.
And one of the things my parents did is they exposed me to lots of things. I had my mother's side and my father's side, and I was always being exposed to music and learning and uncles and aunties and wrestling and I had so many things I was exposed to, and that's for what I thank my parents. And as a result of that, I was I was never felt foreign to anything. I never felt intimidated by anything. I was always relaxed.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? Remember John Stavridis mentioned that he spoke to James Stavridis about the values, and he goes, how do you describe the Greek? And
this is an admiral in the US Navy, by the way.
He's like a
head of NATO.
4-star general. Yeah, he's massive. And there was 3. He goes, one is the philotimos. He goes, friend of strangers. The second one was learning.
Philoxenia.
He goes, and he goes, always learning. He was always learning. And you basically displayed those 2 values. Always the willingness to learn. You never stop learning.
Well, I think that's probably...
So maybe
that would be my strength.
Yeah.
If you ask me what I think my strength is, respectfully, I would say I'm always prepared to learn, and I like learning.
Yeah.
I like to continue to learn. I don't want to sit on where I am and just say, well, I know enough or I've done enough. I'm not interested in that. I don't do things to make money. I mean, the wizard thing I didn't do to make money. I didn't go, wow, I'm going to make all this money. I'm going to set up like the bar. I didn't do any of that. I thought, I can do that. I reckon I can do that. And I'll go about setting it up.
Well, for the record, for people maybe outside Australia who are listening to this, tell us what Wizard was all about.
Well, Wizard Home Loans was a home loan company, but it started off...
because it sounds drab, but really it was
pretty big. Wizard Home Loans was, if not the largest, say the second largest, between us and another one called Aussie Home Loans. There was always sort of a competition as to who was the biggest.
Yep.
Probably in the end, we were the biggest when I sold, but he became bigger after that because I sold to the world's largest company, General Electric. General Electric at the time was, in terms of value, was worth more than every single Australian company on the ASX added together.
Wow. You're kidding?
No. Added together.
Jesus.
In 2004. So I set this business up in 1998 with some other guys. I bought them out, bought them all out. And then 1999, Kerry Packer, who's at the time was Australia's wealthiest man, came along to me. He owned all the big media businesses in Australia apart from Rupert Murdoch, but Kerry Packer came along to me and asked me... we did a deal and he bought 50%. Bought in. He didn't pay me for money. He put the money into the company, got 50%. We took that company from basically zero, making zero money, no loans, to $19 billion worth of loans in 4 years.
Shit.
And making $80 million a year.
What a business partner to have too, Kerry Packer.
And his role was to capitalise the company, but also to use their TV assets and magazine assets and everything else they owned to promote the brand.
Wow.
Which they did brilliantly. And I did it with James, his son, who, is one of the smartest people I've ever met, intellectually I'm talking about. He's had his issues lately, but his intellect was always there and still is there. He's extraordinarily talented and probably one of the most extraordinarily talented people I've ever met.
Really?
Intellectually.
Well, he's part owner of the Rabbitohs, so I'm pleased to hear that.
Yeah, well, he's, apart from being very rich, he's extraordinarily talented intellectually. And I took this business from, we took this business from nowhere to being like probably the 5th or 6th largest lender in Australia.
Okay.
So one stage we were lending more than St. George Bank. And
Wow.
And then the world's largest company came to us and said, we'd like to buy it because we want to come into Australia and take on the big banks, the big 4 banks. And they made me this big offer, which was, in those days, it's $500 million. It's a lot of money in 20 years ago.
Yeah.
People talk about $500 million now. $500 million then was like ridiculous amount of money. We negotiated for 7 months and did the deal, and they took over, and I became the chairman. I sold out, but I kept on as chairman of that business until the GFC. But GE then said to me, "Let's repeat this business in India and Brazil and Mexico and Germany and other places." And James Packer and I invested money into that, so we had 40% and GE had 60%, and we went up into India. I went to India every 5 weeks. And I opened up 58 branches in India.
Wow.
But then the GFC hit. And at that stage, General Electric decided to pull out of consumer finance globally.
Right, okay,
not just in Australia, but globally, around the world. Mm-hmm. So they sold the Wizard business in Australia, which they owned at the time. They sold that, and they sold it to our competitor, Aussie Home Loans, who was at that time was being backed by Commonwealth Bank. So Commonwealth Bank owned 30% of Aussie Home Loan, 100% now. But they bought it out from General Electric because General Electric had to fix its balance sheet up and sell as many assets around the world as it could. So that was like...
where does it sit now?
Wizard so the Commonwealth Bank still own the name.
Right.
Yeah.
But they changed all the Wizard branding to Aussie.
Sure.
Converted everyone over. So
Yeah.
quite a lot of the Aussie branches around Australia are ex-Wizard guys who opened in there originally. Yeah, so it was an incredible journey. I learned a lot about things, especially about myself. But I was lucky. I had Kerry Packer, my partner, and I learned a lot out of him.
This company was a rock star company. It
was a big deal.
Unbelievable during that period.
Yeah, well, it was everywhere. It literally was everywhere. And in fact, if you go today and do focus groups on what would you borrow money from Wizard Home Loans, people still think it exists.
Yeah.
And there's quite a large factor of people who still take the view that they will deal with Wizard Home Loans, although it hasn't existed for 10 years. Yeah. They still think it exists.
I'm not surprised.
In fact, I tried to buy the name back a few times because I then went and set up all over again a company called Yellow Brick Road, and we've been around now for 10 years. In fact, we're much larger than Wizard ever was.
Really?
Kidding. Yellow Brick Road.
More than double.
Wow.
More than double.
And how does it compare now to...
We do $2 billion a month. Wizard was doing like $800 million a month.
Wow.
So we're much, much, much larger.
And that accounts for the inflation as well.
Yes, it does.
I think I had a loan with you guys.
Sorry?
I had a loan with you guys.
With Wizard?
No, Yellow Brick
Road.
Road.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I did.
So, and it's the same business model. Everything's the same.
Yeah.
But it's a much tougher market today. So what I mean by that is our volumes are much bigger, but the profitability is much lower because the margins are much lower on every loan. And that's because me, Aussie, Rams, we put the banks in a position where they had to operate at much lower interest rates because we're taking so much market share from
Makes
them.
sense. Yeah.
So as a result of that, when you come back in the market, you've got to suffer the thing that you created.
Yeah.
And that is lower margin, which means you've got to do greater volumes.
Yeah.
So which is what we do. We do greater volumes but lower margin. And I'm still involved in that sort of environment. And Channel 9 is still one of my biggest shareholders.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Today. I'm the single largest individual shareholder, and Channel 9, a little bit below me, but they're still there, and I've got a couple of other big global shareholders with me.
Fantastic.
Nick, what do you think of that, mate? I mean, again, we take it back to the fact that this is the son of a Greek migrant, with such a with a business like this, success stories like this. I mean, we see these success stories, and it's the kind of thing that our parents say, well, this is something that This is a role model you can look at, right? Is that something that you take seriously? Is that something that you're aware of?
I haven't been aware of it in the past, but I've become more acutely aware in the last few years because people sort of stop me and say things, can I get a photo, or reach out to me these days because, they hit you on Instagram, whatever, which I didn't have before, that didn't exist before. But so I've become more acutely aware of how important it is for me to represent myself properly, which is why I set up the mentor. The reason I set the mentor up is because people always ask me for advice, and I can't give everyone advice. And by the way, everyone's circumstances are different.
Yep.
So I thought what I'll do is I'll start a podcast and I'll invite people into my podcast and I'll interview them about their business. And then I give them an opportunity to ask me one question at the end. And if I do enough of these podcasts, I should cover all the questions that everybody's got to ask. So the audience, the whole idea is, audience, you people want to ask me questions, become part of the audience, listen to the podcast, go through the library of podcasts, listen to the ones that are more relevant to you, and there's your advice. Because I don't have the answer to everybody. Yeah. I don't know. I run a delicatessen. What should I do? Or I run a printing business. What should I do? How would I know? I don't know. I'm a baker. What should I do? I don't know these answers. I'm not a baker.
Wow.
I just know the questions.
Yep.
So my job is to ask people in lots of industries. We've probably done 300-400 podcasts so far. Is to ask all these people in different industries, different business, startups, tech, whatever, health, I don't care what it is. Me ask the questions, they give the answers, and if you're listening in the audience, you say, shit, that's what I need to know. Because everyone says, mentor, can you give me the answers? No, dude,
it's so
I can only give you questions. You know the answer. It's just guide them. Point is, ask the right question. If you're seeking a mentor, get someone who'll ask you the questions, who'll challenge you and ask you the right questions. And then you work out the answer. Only you know the answer. If I was asked, if you want to come to me, Mark, what's the best way to run our podcast? I'd just ask you 1,000 questions.
Can we ask you that?
Well, but I would have to sit here for hours and ask you the questions.
Of course. Yeah.
That's my point. And then eventually you go, you know what? That's the answer. That's what I wanted to know.
Sure.
It's about asking the right questions. And Kerry Packer never told me anything. He just asked me questions all the time. Every month. I turn up to see him once a month. Question. And I'd have to answer them.
Yeah.
And if I didn't know the answer, it was terrifying. And you make sure next month you knew the answer.
Well, I got to ask you about that. I mean, Kerry was notorious for the way that he dealt with people to some degree. I mean, what was it like dealing with him and walking into Kerry's office? By reputation, he's more intimidating than he really was. Right. But he was always the top dog. Yep. No matter what. And he let you know that. There's just no, maybe this, maybe that. He's the top dog, and you remember that when you walk in his office. That's
he's in charge.
Correct. Second thing is, if he called you in, which is not uncommon, don't think you're going to go for half an hour, 1 hour. You're going to be there for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, and you can't leave until he's ready. Finish with you. And you could be there to 10 o'clock at night because he never used to start until late in the day.
So you'd be in a meeting, say, for 8 hours talking. So you'd be switched on the
questions
whole time.
To you. What about this? I heard about that. What about this? I was talking to someone else over there. What do you think? And it'd wander around all around the place, meander everywhere on different topics, and he'd bring you back to where he wanted to be, what he wanted to know. So that was not unusual. And he wouldn't forget a thing. What you said last time.
Wow.
Never forget. Never. So he was formidable.
Yeah.
Is one way of doing it. But he was a great partner, just a great partner. I learned so much from him.
Just from him asking you questions.
Yeah, what to think about. Because I never really knew what to think about. And and it happens now, I can easily he gave you bench strength because, you're running your own business and you might be in partnership together like you guys. Mm-hmm. You talk about what you're doing every day, but you need someone to come and challenge you a little bit. You're not going to challenge him, he's not going to challenge you. You just, shit, cool, let's get ready, let's get the cameras right, all that stuff. Yep. Let's get all it ready, some guests coming in, let's get it done. And then you run off and do your own thing. Kerry was great at making sure that he brought to the table things that I may not have thought about, or more, but probably what's more important, things I was thinking about but I was sort of avoiding. He was able to get to, you know what, have you thought about this? And I'm thinking, oh, fuck, that's not something I want to talk about. Because we all do that.
Yeah.
We involve ourselves with being busy because there's something we don't want to address.
It's having the hard conversations.
All the hard stuff you sort
And
of
there's all the
park
hard conversations.
Yeah.
It's the hard. You're 100% right. And he was only interested in the hard conversations. No small talk. What are we going to do? Like, I remember in 2004, he asked me, how many assets we got? I said, we got $19 billion worth of mortgage assets. He said, how much do we owe? I said, we owe $19 billion. I said, because we had to fund $19 billion worth of mortgages with borrowing $19 billion. He went white. And he said, so if something goes wrong with all those mortgages we've lent, we still have to pay back $19 billion. I said, yeah, we do. I said, but don't worry. I said, because I've hedged, because all our money came from overseas, or most of it came from overseas. So I've hedged the currency risk on every transaction. I've hedged the interest rate risk, because the money I borrow from in US dollars or euros or pound sterling, they were at one interest rate, yet I was charging Australian interest rates for my borrowers. So I said, I've hedged the risk between the different interest rates. So that's completely hedged, and it's hedged what they call book match. So it's hedged for the term of the money that I've lent. So it's not going to be a problem. And also I had to pay, if I've got $19 billion of debt, I have to pay it at a certain rate. I have to pay my investors, the bondholders, so much per month. But if you pay me, you're one of my borrowers in Australia, you start paying me off faster, that's called, you're prepaying me. I have to manage that what they call prepayment speed, because my investor doesn't want the money early.
Yep.
He just wants it at the rate that he thinks he's going to get it at, which we agreed. So
you reinvest it.
So I had to have strategies to do that.
Yep.
And I had to manage what they call the prepayment speed. And he said, oh, yeah. And he said, and who you got all these hedges with? Because, you have to pay for it. I said, I got with global banks. He said, which ones? Not Australian banks. I said, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, what happens if they go broke and you have to call on the hedge fund, but the hedging contract with the bank that you borrow, that you've done the transaction with, goes broke? I said, come on, Gary, like one of them was a top 6 bank in the world, another one was, I won't say the names, but well-known banks. He said, what happens if the whole world gets into fucking trouble, son? He said, you and I are going to be sitting here holding this whole thing. He said, I'm rich. He said, but I'm not that rich. He said, I can't handle that, 19 billion. I said, there's nothing going to happen. Well, he said, I think it was probably time that this business is so big and needs to be owned by someone bigger. Someone who can handle that. Someone with a bigger balance sheet, balance sheet, which is why we sold to G. And
he could see it.
2008, a couple of years later, global financial crisis, and the very banks that we had these hedging contracts with went broke.
He fucking saw it. Jesus Christ.
Now, that's what I learned from Kerry. He just asked me 1,000 questions, which I never ever thought about.
Yeah.
And even at the day, I never thought again about it until 2008. He'd passed away at this stage. But that's what happened. He was right.
Do you reckon he saw it coming? Or were
He's
there
just such a good
signs
business person. He knows that things can't go great forever.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, he's such a big gambler. He knew that you can win on the table, but it's not going to last forever. You take it off the table before you run your last bet. You don't keep putting it back on.
Yeah.
And that's something else I learned from him.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to someone yesterday afternoon, a well-known guy, a well-known boxer, who's got a great business, a really well-known boxer, ex-Australian, ex-boxer, but a world champion. And he said to me, oh, look, this business he's got is going blah, blah, blah. And I said, mate, if you get an offer to buy that business now or in the next 6 months, maybe you could get more money for it in 12 months. I said, but if I was you, I'd take the first offer, because the first offer is going to be your best offer. And I remember Kerry telling me, if the money's put in front of you, take it.
Yep.
And that's how he was on the table. As soon as he started winning enough, take it off. Don't just keep rebetting it.
Yeah.
Wow.
My dad used to, my family were really into food, which I guess most Greeks are, I presume now, but because they had restaurants and stuff, I guess. But I just remember when I was a young man, I used to love going to the delicatessen and buying the big round steel sardines. They were on layers with lots of salt.
Yeah.
And Dad and I would take all the layers off, and we would gut the sardines and pull the bone out. And we would marinate. My mouth's watering thinking about it, but we used to marinate these sardines and distribute amongst the place. We do, and also we used to make olives a lot. Buy the olives at the markets. Yeah, no,
I made
boxes.
some last season.
You made some? Yeah. I've got olive. I got a farm, but I got olives there, and I'm still having olives from 2000. I'm still eating olives from 2016.
Wow.
They've lasted that long, and they're
What type?
We had just every mix. We couldn't, not Kalamata in particular, but just mix of lots of brands, because the bees like to pollinate across different species, or whatever they're called. You know, like maybe some Spanish ones and Greek ones, Italian ones. And you don't always get olives on every tree. You just get them on different ones every season.
And in alternate years.
And they rotate.
In alternate years, correct. And you've got to have a certain temperature in the winter for it to be any good. But yeah, we used to do a lot of different foods. My dad's really into food, like making food himself, growing, as he's Greek, he has his lettuce and he's got his tomatoes. And now I have all this. I grow it in my garden. I got every herb.
That's great.
I'm growing tomatoes at the moment. You got to say,
I got a lemon and lime tree now.
You got to have a lemon tree. Problem, I don't want, the greatest respect to Australians, I don't like the Eureka lemon. It's a pain in the ass. The skin's too thick. I like the Maya lemon. It's a better lemon. A bit more citrusy. It's a bit more sweet, and when it gets, if you leave it on the tree right to the very end, just before it's about to drop off, it's very sweet. You can eat the skin, everything.
Really?
Yeah, I love this. Wow. I'm big into. You got to have a lemon tree. I've got lots of olive oil from my own olives. I got my own olives.
Fantastic.
Wine, whiskey.
100% virgin. Oh,
yeah.
Fuck, you'd say whiskey.
Yeah. I got whiskey. My own whiskey.
Fantastic.
I got a whiskey business called The Bird.
You're kidding.
Not as in Pulaki, but
we'll probably have to bring some of that.
Proper bird.
What a classic.
We'll have to bring some bird onto the...
Single malt, and I got single malt and single barrel, and I got single malt and mixed barrel,
Are you selling this?
Yeah. It's called The Bird.
Okay.
I have partners in Adelaide. We made it together, and they're a well-known winery down there, and but the guys who own it, my mates, and we took 8 years to put this whiskey together. And we just released it I don't know, maybe a month ago or something. 2 months, 3 months ago.
So it's new.
3 weeks ago.
Oh, we should have it on the show.
Yeah, well, I should have thought about bringing some. That's what we should have drank instead of...
Instead of lighter fluid.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but Greeks love whiskey.
Yeah, definitely. In winter, I love it.
This is a very drinkable whiskey. It's not peaty, and it's quite soft. And it's more closer Japanese. It leaves that soft taste on your mouth, the sweetness, the aftertaste. I'll send you. I'll get John. We'll get a bottle out of the boys. Yeah, and you next one you say Mark Bouris gave us this, and you drink in front of
definitely.
everybody.
We'll give it a plug.
Yeah.
So I used to have in my little distillery there. I used to go to Japan for work, and I'd bring it the amazing Japanese whiskey, which is from Sapporo region.
Yeah.
So it was the clean waters they use. It was just beautiful. It was crisp. It was clean. It was.
It's a lot about the water, and it's a lot about the barrels that you finish it off in. So, but the water, ours comes from Adelaide Hills. It's beautiful water. It's like the same water they use for some of the great wines.
Yeah, it's a wine range.
Yeah, so it's and my partners own a winery there, like a really famous one.
Shiraz.
The Shiraz. They're called the Bird in Hand. That's the name of the winery. Their famous wine's called Bird's Nest, and won twice world's best Shiraz. And I use their barrels, which has Shiraz on the inside, to finish my whiskey off. So, and they've got great French oak barrels. So we draw the colour and the sweetness out of the oak in the barrels, and from the Shiraz skin that's left inside the barrels. We draw the sugars out of that into the whiskey, and that gives it its colour,
That's my favourite wine as well.
That's how we finish it off. And
so this could be right up your alley.
But it's a bit of a Greek thing, if I could make my own bread, I would be happy.
Yeah.
Olives, olive oil, salt, whiskey, happy, baby.
Fantastic.
I'm serious.
Yeah. Well, I got my mum for the bread. I got you for the olive oil.
Yeah.
I'll make my own olives.
But isn't that right though? And maybe some cheese.
100%.
Yeah.
Maybe add the tomato in there as well.
We grow your own tomatoes. Yeah. We all grow tomatoes. It doesn't matter.
Horta. Do you have horta at all?
Sorry,
horta.
Well, we don't have proper horta here, but yeah.
That's true, actually.
Yeah,
very true.
My mum grows it.
When they say unless your mum's walking around the streets and picking out the,
all in a garden.
Yeah.
Mate.
But like horta as in from the village.
No, she grows it. Oh, actually,
what did she grow though? Like, are we talking about not spinach and stuff like that? I don't like when they do this.
Endives, we're talking about all that sort of thing.
Where's Nick? He knows all about that.
Well, he's got a spot He's got a spot apparently.
We're going to do
Where
an
did he say-
episode on it, actually.
Where did he say that he had it? Well, actually, we
Actually,
shouldn't
he wouldn't
say where it
say.
is.
He wouldn't
Yeah,
say.
he wouldn't say
But
where
there
it
is
was.
Australian horta, but like things like these things that grow near the beach, like Aboriginal natives, greens, but they're very salty.
Yeah.
I can't think what they're called now, but there is Australian horta. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Apparently, I've got some out here. Nick, another guest that came on, he goes, "Oh yeah, that's the stuff that
Nick
we
Andrew
eat.
Tarkus.
That's
We
part of the
mention him
horta."
on every episode.
Yeah,
It's like
but
a weed.
but I get nervous that maybe it's poison or something. Like, you don't
I just
know.
think a dog's pissed on it. That's why.
Yeah,
we have it.
equally. Yeah, totally. If it was my house, my dog would.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, we're getting closer towards the end now, but look, you've mentioned the podcast, or the podcasts rather. Tell us a little bit about how you got into podcasting. I mean, it's been around primarily since about 2007, but has exploded in the last few years.
Yeah, well, I started podcast. I used to listen to This American Life quite a bit myself, and it wasn't on modern headsets or that. It was like old school stuff, and I used to do it at the gym, and I'd be finished the gym at 6:30 in the morning, and I'd be listening to it. And I said to my business partner Nick Fordham one day, I said, "Look, mate, why don't we do a podcast?" And he's always up for anything. And he said, "Okay, let's try it out." This is like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And we went and hired a studio from John Ibram, the famous person,
King of the Cross.
and he had a studio that he built for Kyle Sandilands,
Right.
Because they're mates, and it was on top of the cross. There's something called Holy Moly there or something. It's where the Coca-Cola sign is underneath there. Anyway, we hired it out. It wasn't being rented, so we hired it out, and he hired us a sound engineer as well, editor type person, and it was all just sound in those days, no video, and we didn't know what we were doing, and we said we could get some guests. We found some guests, and we were doing this for a while, and Uber, the car people, were about to launch in Sydney, and it was a big controversy, as you remember, and they said to us, don't know why they said to us, but they said to us, would you guys like to do something called the Uber Pitch? And I said, well, what is that? And they said, well, there's a startup conference on at the town hall in Sydney. If you go to that, Matt Barry was holding this startup conference, the guy from freelancer.com. And when they said, speak at the conference, there'd be like 500 people there. And what we want you to do is announce at the conference that if you've got a story or a business you want to pitch to me, Mark Bouris, go onto the Uber app, hit on the icon that says Uber Pitch, and tell us where you're standing in the city. And we'll send an Uber there to pick you up, and Mark will be in the back, and you've got 7 minutes to pitch to him. We had a video in there, and Mark will give you 7 minutes of feedback, and you get out, and then we pick the next one up.
So it's like the Apprentice almost.
Sorta,
but,
but a quick version.
We haven't even spoken about that.
And I said, well, yeah, but they said, well, and Mark, you can pick 5 other people to do it. So I got Matt Barry, I got Daniel Petrie from Airtree Ventures, I got like different people, right? I got John Winning from Winning's Appliances, just dudes that I knew, and we all got in the back of an Uber car. I announced it at the conference, and we had, in the first hour, we had 5,000 people.
Wow.
There was only 5 people at the conference. So 5,000 people hit the Uber app to say I'm on the corner of this and corner there, corner blah, blah, blah. It was like mental. And then by the end of the day, we had 10,000 people.
Wow.
But we can only cover like, if you have Matt work out 14 minutes into that, we only like doing 20 each or something. We all met in the park. We're all exhausted by the end of the day. Then we're going to go and do it in Melbourne. But the police rang us and said, you can't come to Melbourne because there's riots everywhere in Melbourne by the cab drivers. You can't. We're not going to let you into the town to do this with Uber.
Yeah.
So we didn't go to Melbourne. So off the back of that, it was called the Mark Bouris Show in those days, but the show became really popular because of this Uber pitch thing. And then I got approached by Southern Cross Austereo owns Triple M and all those other stations, Today FM, etc. And they said, we want to launch a thing here called Podcast One, which is a podcast platform. Would you like to be our sort of kickoff type first one? And we all decided together to change the name from the Mark Bouris Show to the Mentor. That's how it started. Wow. I since bought them out, and we run it ourselves. We've got our own studios these days in a building I own in Darlinghurst. Excuse me, and we've got my own team. We have everything ourselves, and our model is that we basically have advertisers on our program. So we have an audience, small business audience, but it's I think we're number 2 small business podcast in Australia. Straight Talk's number 7 in the UK.
Wow. Jeez.
That's right, John. It was number 7 or something like that.
I think it was number 6.
Number 6, okay. Well, so in the UK,
I'll take that.
places like that's hectic.
Top 10. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And the Straight Talk podcast, which is different than Mental podcast, is really cool. We get some pretty amazing people on there, and now people are hitting us up to come on there. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I listen to it quite often in
Yeah,
the
we
morning.
listen
Straight
to it
Talk
all the time.
or
Both.
both.
Yeah, I've got you on my favourites. I've given you a 5-star
Thank you.
rating. So
Thank you. We get. Well, I'm lucky. We get some really cool guests, like
they're really
and people
cool.
I never get to meet if I didn't have the show.
Very diverse.
Yeah, totally. I'm like from gangsters to like
the Spaniard. That
the
was a good
Spaniard
one.
on
Yeah,
there, and
yeah.
like
That was unbelievable.
we've got Graham Abel Henry, like who was Ned Smith's partner in crime.
Yeah, I haven't heard
Went to
that
jail
one.
for murder and all sorts of stuff.
And
Like
that-
it
what's the
tells us
South
all sorts
player?
of stories, you know.
Joe Williams? Was it Joe Williams?
Yeah, Joe.
yeah, Joe.
Joe Williams,
Went to school
ex-boxer
with Joe.
footballer. Yeah, he's one of your blokes, one of the South Sydney.
Well, we went to Marcelin together.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But he's a South player. He played for South.
He did?
Yep.
He
And
did, yeah.
he's a Wagga boy or something, is he?
Yeah, so he came. I remember when he came to Marcelin, he was, I think it was in either year 10 or year 11. So I was a little bit younger than him. But he got brought out from by the Roosters at the time.
Yeah, initially, yeah. Well, but because Arthur Beetson got him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, he came into the Marcelin side. Fantastic for A grade side at that time.
Well, but Marston's always been a great rugby league school.
Joe Williams is the only player I have ever seen in rugby league who's been able to turn a referee's decision, and it was Steve Clark. It was Steve Clark in an MCC grand final. I don't know how he did it. I don't know what he said, but he managed to get Steve Clark to reverse his decision. Talk about straight talk.
We've had some unbelievable guests on that
Yeah,
show, but it's
you have.
pretty varied, and we get unusual, pretty very people on there. But that's cool. We had Nick Giannopoulos there recently.
Yeah, saw that was good.
Wog Boys
Yeah.
forever. And Nick's a pretty serious dude when it comes to racism. Like I didn't have to say much.
Yeah.
I literally just asked him a question. Why?
I think he's still carrying scars from it. I don't
100%.
think he's recovered.
If you listen to the show, he gets really into the weeds about how he was bullied with racism as a young man and his friends, and maybe Melbourne's different to Sydney, perhaps. I mean, I didn't experience bullying, but I saw racism, but maybe it's just my personality. It didn't seem to bother me. Maybe it didn't register with me. It might have been just too up in the clouds. I didn't know what I was doing, but it didn't really register with me.
Yeah.
I knew it was directed at my Greek parentage. I knew that.
Yeah.
Now if you,
But you just
I
brushed it off.
didn't have a problem turning and punching him there. That didn't bother me. But
Yeah.
but then it stopped there. I didn't sort of feel scarred by it.
Yeah.
But Nick was upset. So he's turned the racism conversation or narrative, the broader racism narrative, not just about Greeks, but the broader racism narrative into comedy. He's done a great job.
Yeah, absolutely he has.
But I got to talk to Nick, and that was fantastic. I mean, he's very funny, but naturally funny. But as soon as I touched on that topic, he went into it, man.
So he turned at that point.
Totally, he went right into it like it was very serious, and it is a serious topic, racism, and it should be a serious topic, racism. I think anywhere where we see people taking a view just because you're different, whether it's colour, creed, race, gender, that's a serious topic, and it should be dealt with really quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
And like you said, some people can take it more than others. Some people, you don't know how it's going to impact you.
You don't know that, you don't, and because, I've got to be tolerant of somebody because of their views, but equally, they have to be tolerant of my views, and
Definitely.
it's not an easy thing for them to be tolerant because they can't understand. And comedy helps us tolerate lots of things because it laughs at everything, and Nick's laughing at himself. But at the same time, he's teaching us something. That's why shows like that is, to me anyway, so important. That movie's so important.
Yeah.
And that whole genre is important.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're a black person and you feel racism. I mean, Wog Boys Forever is something they should watch too, because it is turning that into a sort of a comedy.
Yeah. Look, what blows me away just listening to you speak, it feels like you got your fingers in so many businesses. Like you mentioned before, you got your scotch, your olive oil, your podcasting, your bank loaning. What else are you in? And what's your favourite?
I love property. We do a fair bit of property stuff. but mostly my family. But what else am I in? Well, I'm always dabbling in different things. I'm always looking at different ideas. I mean,
Can I ask you, how many businesses have you had? Have you counted them?
20.
20
different businesses, over the years, like proper businesses, staff and turnover and all that sort of stuff,
How many have you got going now?
About 5.
5.
Yeah, 5 different businesses, which I sort of tend to literally every day. But that's sort of my hobby, you know what I mean? And sometimes probably I am too busy at the moment. But I literally mean that. I probably should be just pulling back a little bit and thinking. I mean, I've got investments in gyms and all sorts of things. Like I'm invested with a guy called Nick Langton and a few other people in a gym business called Alta, which is Conor McGregor's an investor. Like it's a global business. So we have a platform where we provide marketing to MMA gyms. We market for them to run our program to train men and women who have never had a fight before in the cage, train them for a half a year to become competent to have a fight, and then we arrange the fight night for them. And we match them with each other, obviously, both on skill and weight and age and all that sort of stuff, and gender. And that's going on all around. That's going around the world now at the moment. We've got that in a number of countries around the world. And actually I met them through my podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, right at the very beginning when they first kicked it off, and I was one of the early investors. So, and I get involved. Like I just don't sort of invest. I actually get involved. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
And they like to sort of involve me too. So that's sort of what keeps me alive, to be honest with you.
Wow, so it's more like a hobby, but then it becomes...
I don't play golf. I'm 66. I don't play golf.
He's 66.
Yeah, but I play these hobbies. These are my hobbies.
Yeah. I just can't believe how fit you look.
Well, I train a lot. I exercise a lot. I mean, again, it's not because it used to be vanity. These days, it's not vanity. It's more
health.
Part of my system, part of my structure. I mean, if I don't do it, I go nuts. You know, like if I don't get up early in the morning, go to the gym. If I leave it go for too long, I feel like shit. You know, and
you need that endorphin kick. Yeah, you need the endorphins to kick.
I don't want to get correct.
I know what you mean.
I don't want to feel like shit. I don't like it. I don't like, drink too much or something on a Friday night and not get up Saturday morning and go do something. I don't like the feeling, and I've gone through enough, suffered enough feeling that way. I mean, don't want to get me wrong. I mean, I'm not a saint. I've mucked up pretty hard, but I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to waste any day, any morning, any sunrise, any sunset, any warm breeze. I don't want to waste any moment because life's short.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
We've got to enjoy it.
What a message.
Yeah, what a way, to wrap it up, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, look, I mean, we could be talking for the next 6 weeks the way we're going. There's so many more questions that we've
I'm expecting a frappe to come out any minute.
Well, if you were here in the morning, we would. Usually the way this works is if it's before midday, it's frappe.
Yeah.
If it's after midday, we're straight into the
really? You do that, eh?
I can do a Greek coffee for you.
The proper.
Absolutely.
We buy
carnation milk.
We go buy it.
Well,
someone makes one around here.
On the corner, yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, I do that at home.
He does it.
We've got it.
But you do with the carnation milk?
Carnation, yes.
Yep.
Well, the proper one is Nunu. That's the one that comes from Greece.
Oh, I didn't know there was one there.
So it's got
condensed milk.
Now.
Condensed milk, yeah.
As long as it's condensed milk, so you get your instant coffee.
Yeah.
So
Nescafe coffee they put in the bottom, yeah.
It's pretty crap, but anyway, you put that much water in it, you beat it in like a milkshake maker, doubles in size, triples in size, then you put your ice in there, a little bit of water and a little bit of condensed milk, and mate.
Because the condensed milk's sweetened.
Yeah, it does.
Sweetening. And do you have yours with some sugar?
I have mine straight. I don't even have milk anymore, actually.
You don't have the carnation milk? To me, it's not the same.
Yeah.
I've gone off it a little bit. It's
so you got to have milk and sugar, I think.
Yeah, look, I'm trying to get off the dairy, but...
What about Greek coffee?
I had one literally an hour before you got here.
You have?
Yeah, if you want one, I can make you one.
No, not too late for me now in the day, but if it was the morning, I definitely would. If I'm feeling sort of a bit... buggered, I will have one in the morning. At home, have my own briquette, just make it myself.
Beautiful. There's nothing better.
But I have mine a little bit sweet though.
This is the Uzo Talk hack that we've spoken about. you read the coffee as well. My godfather's mother used to do that for me.
It's all bullshit.
It's all bullshit.
They make it up.
It's all crap.
They want to tell you something.
Yeah.
Let me read the coffee.
And it's always good news. It's always good news.
Here, don't worry, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. For me, it was always Thaparis Dromo, and you know, like Vlepo na proshopo. It's like, okay, it's always the same thing. But anyway,
you make it whatever you want. That's what
exactly.
it is. You just read the line. Oh, it looks
But
like
it's
a
a
face
bit.
or
But it's a bit
fence.
like we were saying before. Like, and that's pretty much a Greek thing or Hellenic thing anyway. Like, we enjoy telling stories, hearing stories, participating in stories, and we'll do whatever we can to engender that or to engage in that, whether it's food or coffee or we talk about Nescafe, like the frappe, where like we all have a little story around it, and we're waiting for somebody to introduce the concept, and then we start talking. And the more of these you have, the more stories come out.
The better the story gets.
Well, this is the difference. When you have a tipper or you have 4 or 5, if you have the coffee, the traditional Greek thing is to sit on the one cup for like 6 hours.
4 hours, yeah. That's why they went mad in Greece. That's why they upped the price. Because people
No
would
one
sit
drinks.
they sit at a
They don't
cafe
drink
for
much.
4 hours and have the one
and
coffee.
they talk shit in
for
the
4
cafe.
hours.
In my dad's village, can I tell you one quick story?
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
So, I just before the year before COVID, I went to my dad's village, which I do. I try to go every year. I go to Greece every year, but I try to go to the village. So I drive down from wherever I am. Anyway, I went in this time, and there's just one sort of shop. Mm-hmm. There's a convenience store, which I don't go to, but there's one shop which sells, it's like a bakery type place, but they have everybody who makes stuff in the grow stuff, they come to this place. It's sort of like a little market, but it's just one shop, right? Mm-hmm. And out the front there's all these old fellas sitting, you know. And I walk in, you know, because no one ever goes, people don't go to the village very much. And I drive in, I walk in, and I was going to buy some bread and blah, blah, blah. And this old fella there, real old fella, he says to me, who are you? I said, my name's Mark. He went, what's your name? You know, I'm Mark Bouris. He said, Bouris. He said, you're related to which Bourises? You know, like there's a few of them in the, you know, which part of the Bouris clan? I said, he said, what's your father's name? I said, George Bouris. He said, what's his brother's name? And I said, we had 5 brothers. I went through them. He said, I know them. He's about the same age as my dad. And a couple of years older. And he goes, I said, what's your name? He said, Dimitri. And Chosis. Dimitri Chosis. I said, oh, yeah. And he said, what time is it in Australia now? I said, it's, 8 p.m. or something. He said, I had my mobile phone. He said, is your father awake? He said, I know your father. When I was a boy, he was a bit younger than me. He said, can we talk? You ring your father. So I ring Dad, Pop, this bloke wants to talk to you. He's named Mr. Chosis. He said he knows you, blah, blah, blah. Dad said, yeah, I sort of remember him. He said, put him on. Anyway, they're talking for about 8-10 minutes, and I could see this old guy, Mr. Chosis, laughing. My father never makes jokes, he's a quiet guy. Mm. And hang up, blah, blah, blah. And I said to Dimitri, I said, what was my father saying? He said, I reminded your father that Mr. Chosis's dad was my father's godfather.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Small world. And and I remember your father, and we play soccer and everything in there. He said, and I reminded your father of a time when your father was about 6 or 7 years of age, when the gypsies, or the Bulgarians, or Romanians used to come into the village once a year, put a show on. Puppets, blah, blah, blah. The really thing what they're doing whilst they put the show on, they're robbing, stealing the chickens and the eggs, but it doesn't matter, okay? Yeah. And he said, and your father, all his brothers older brothers had money to go to the show, and your father was walking around outside the church in the square, kicking the sand, crying. And he said, my father, the godfather, went to Dad and said to George, what's the matter? And my father said, I can't go to the show, I don't have the money. This was in the war. War was on. Mm-hmm. So my father's house was occupied by the German officers upstairs, and and the boys all lived in the basement. Huh? Right. So no money. Nothing, no food, no money. And my dad was upset. So Mr. Chosis Sr. said to my father, how much is the fare? And my father told him, and he gave my father the fare. And my father was very happy, and my dad was talking about this story. Mr. Chosis said, my father told him, and Dad said, yeah, I remember it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was nice. And I went home, and I went to my father's house, which straight away, like the next day, which was due to be there on a Saturday, I went there to see Dad, and I said, I was talking to Mr. Chosis, blah, blah, I heard you say the conversation, he told me what you said. And I said to my father, I said, Dad, out of interest, how much money, like, what did the old fella give you? What was the fare? He said, I can't really remember. He said, it was either an egg or a potato.
Oh, wow.
That gives you some perspective, doesn't it, eh?
That was the fare to get in.
One egg or one potato. And he didn't even have that. And he sat back, living in his house in Mossman. I could see Dad think to himself,
You've come a long way.
I've done okay.
Yeah, wow.
You know, like an egg or a potato. And we can't fathom that.
Yeah.
Sitting here now, like,
What a
we
story.
can't fathom the biggest event of the year, once a year, that everybody in the village is going to. You can't afford one egg or one potato when you're a farmer. It puts everything into perspective just once a year. When we turn on our kids, Netflix, Stan, whatever, Paramount Plus, they've got all of them.
Yeah, fridge full of food and they're complaining trying
Everything.
to eat.
Yeah, totally. And so there's some good perspective for us. And that's a good way to remember, our parents, and especially if they're Greek, they came to Australia and that's what they left behind, and that's why they did so well here. Not just because of hard workers, because it was easy to work hard. Because everything was on top, extra. Yeah. Everything you did was cream.
Yeah.
And that always, I never forget that story. It always stays with me. It's perspective on how well we're doing.
And look how well you did after
Well,
that.
but again, for me, it's all cream for me.
Yeah.
And I've been having fun while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed myself today, guys. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you for
ride.
being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here and for taking the time to be here. I'm sure all of our listeners are going to be really as inspired as they are listening to the mental, hopefully, and to Straight Talk. Because like I said, we both listen to it. We're so proud that you're doing the work that you're doing. You are a role model for a lot of us. So again, thank you for that. And
well, that's cool.
All the
Thanks
very
for saying
best.
that.
All the very best for the future. We can't wait to see what you do
I've
next.
got potatoes.
Good stuff, mate. Look, thank you, Mark.
dear.
It's very inspirational having you here and just listening to those stories. Like me and Tom have talked about you for a while now, and how successful you've been. I thought how great it is, but having you here and listening to it live, and what an inspiration your Greek heritage, I guess played a part as well.
It definitely has inspired me, totally, and or motivated me.
Yeah, definitely. Look, thank you, mate. Keep up good work with the podcast, because that's what I hear in the mornings when I go for a walk before work.
Keep them coming.
So, thank you, mate. Thanks for coming.
Thanks very much.
Well, Nick, thank you for being here as well, mate. Always a pleasure. The email is uzotalk@outlook.com. Follow us on most social media platforms @uzotalk or @uzo_talk on Instagram. Nick Athanasiou, thank you very much, mate.
Tom, you're a champion. Thank you, mate. Well done.
We'll see you next time. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Ακολουθήστε μας στο Soundees, στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcasts και στο Google Podcasts.